Me, along with the rest of the local media, got an opportunity to sit down with Panthers General Manager Dan Morgan this morning, getting some insight into the Adam Thielen trade and what's going on with Hunter Renfrow. I'll tell you my takeaways from that conversation right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday. And yeah, I know it's been kind of a wonky schedule the last couple of weeks, but next week's week one, and that's going to be us back in our routine for every single show coming out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I don't want to delay getting y'all this important information. So that's why the show's been coming out the way they've been coming out this week and really the last couple of weeks as we've gone through the preseason and also training camp. But thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Do me a favor, follow me over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. You're going to want to, because starting next week on Wednesday, the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back. That's right. Every single Wednesday throughout the regular season, I'm answering your mailbag questions. So what you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council or at me over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council, to get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag, and cannot wait to get back in that routine with y'all coming up this season in 2025. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Got to head over to the stadium today at 11 o'clock and sit down along with the rest of the local media with Panthers General Manager and President of Football Operations, Dan Morgan. Got to include both titles for Dan as we chatted about the 53-man roster, Adam Thielen trade, and how the team's looking heading into 2025. And here are just a couple of takeaways that I have from that 30 or so minute conversation that we all had with Dan this morning on Thursday at Bank of America Stadium. Starting off the Adam Thielen trade. He had an opening statement. He said, obviously, you all know that we traded away Adam. Panthers got what I think was a pretty good return for Adam Thielen, receiving a 2026 fifth-round pick and then a 2027 fourth-round pick. And getting that fourth-round pick, really getting that fourth-round value was something that the Panthers wanted to get out of sending Adam back home to Minnesota. And Dan said that it was the Vikings that called him. And once that happened, he immediately went to Adam, brought him into his office and told him, Minnesota's interested in you. Would you be interested in going back home? And Adam said, yeah, sure. I would love to do that. So once that happened, Dan was willing to find a way that was agreeable for Carolina and, of course, for Adam Thielen and the Minnesota Vikings to send him back to Minnesota. And this was about a week-long process to where they were finally able to get that deal done on Wednesday morning. And certainly there were some headaches throughout it. Dan talked about how there were times where both sides hated each other, but he wanted to do right by the player, but first and foremost, do right by the organization and put Carolina in a position where if they're going to send away Adam Thielen, who's been their best receiver over the last couple of years, they needed to trust what they had behind him and also not just give him away, but get in return some picks that they felt like could help them out as they continue to build this roster up over the next coming off seasons and into the future. And that's what we saw play out on Wednesday morning, right around 10 a.m. when Adam Thielen was traded back home to Minnesota to close out what will be the final year of his career by all accounts. And Dane even mentioned the fact that Adam can go back there. It's going to be his last year. He basically said that he's going to retire after this year. Adam Thielen is. It's a good story for him to go back home to Minnesota. And it's a great story for Carolina as well, with Xavier Legette, Tedero McMillan, Jalen Coker, those three guys stepping into the roles as the top three players at receiver. Jalen Coker, Dan Morgan said, will be playing in the slot this upcoming season. So replacing Adam Thielen. Really excited about that trio and what the Panthers can continue to build in their passing game with those three guys. And also JT Sanders, the second-year tight end out of Texas, who was really coming along strong last season before suffering a neck injury against Kansas City late into the year. So Adam Thielen, wanted to go back. They're willing to work out a deal, and that was a deal that Carolina felt like worked out. And Dan did say he would not have made this deal if they weren't comfortable with what they had outside of Adam Thielen in that wide receiver room, which is a strong vote of confidence in that young group, and something that Dave Canales also said on Wednesday afternoon when we spoke to him about the Adam Thielen trade, and now the guy stepping up there at wide receiver. Hunter Renfrow, still plenty of questions about what his future is, if there is any future for him in Carolina. Dan Morgan actually was texting with Hunter on Wednesday evening. He told us this morning and says that they want Hunter back. He told Hunter, we want you here in Carolina, but it's still up in the air as far as what that role is going to be. Because if it was as simple as Hunter Renfrow, you're coming back to Carolina to be on the 53-man roster, then why are we even having the conversation right now? To me, if Hunter's somebody they want back, that they have said that to him, why is he not here right now, other than they're only offering him a practice squad opportunity? Like, that's what it has to be. Or Hunter went through the preseason, the training camp, and he felt like, I don't know if I still got it. Maybe he just wants to retire. Like, that's a part of it as well to me. Like, I'm thinking that he either is ready to retire, that they're not offering him the role that he wants. That means maybe on the practice squad, or maybe monetarily, if he's going to be on the 53, the money isn't matching up to what he wants if he's going to come back to Carolina. I'm not so sure. And I talked to y'all about this yesterday. I don't know what's really changed from Tuesday when he was released to yesterday to even today, aside from us knowing that they're in constant communication, that Dan was talking to him last night, and he told him straight up, we want you here. But you look at it, we know who's going to play the X. That's going to be T-Mac. We know who's going to play in the slot. That's going to be Jalen Coker. And then at Z is going to be Xavier Legette. You have your top three guys. And then behind them, I assume it would be David Moore as the fourth one, as he has the most experience. And he did show out pretty well in that fourth receiver spot last year when called upon with the injury to Thielen, trading Deontay Johnson away midway through the season. That gave him the opportunity to step up and make a couple of plays where I think he had his best season overall since he had first come to Carolina when he did not make the team a couple of years ago. So if he comes back and he's on the active roster, is he the fourth or fifth guy? And then again, we talked about this. Special teams matters. That's why they went out and got Dale Von Campbell. He's coming in to be a gunner. That's why Bryson Tremaine made this team, because he had a great camp, but also can help out on special teams. Jimmy Horn Jr., that's why they literally drafted him, to be able to help out immediately on special teams. And that's not exactly what Hunter was doing, aside from getting the chance to field punts during training camp. Didn't see it during the preseason games. He was injured for one of them. So I just don't know where he fits in, and they might want him, but do they want him on the 53? Because that is something that has not been said explicitly at this point in time. So either Hunter wants to retire, the money's not right for him right now, or they're only asking him to come back and be on the practice squad. And is that something that he wants to do at this stage of his career? We'll find out. But they do want Hunter Renfrow back in Carolina, but it hasn't happened right now. And that has to leave you wondering, and I'm certainly asking, why have they not been able to come to terms on that agreement? There's other opportunities, I'm sure that are out there. He said he wants to be in the Carolinas. If there's another place that he would go that's not too far from home, it would be Atlanta. And I don't know exactly if the Falcons and Hunter Renfrow are having conversations at all. So that's where things stand as far as a wide receiver room. Adam Thielen being traded away, the why and the how, and of Hunter Renfrow currently not being here, but they still would like for him to be here at some point in time. But again, I ask, in what role and at what price? Linebacker depth is certainly a question heading into the regular season, after surprisingly on day one, or really before the start of training camp, losing Josie Jewell for the time being. That's the way that at least they presented it, that he could come back if he was able to get over his concussion symptoms. And certainly thoughts go out to Josie Jewell. Hopefully he's doing fine. I spoke to Clyde and Sherrillis back in the locker room on Thursday night after the game, and he was saying he had talked to Josie recently, and Josie's doing well. So hopefully for Josie, his family, that he can be happy, healthy, whole, as we always talk about at the end of the show, and can come back and be with them, more importantly. And if he can come back and play football, that's great. So we'll see how that progresses throughout the season for Carolina. But right now, it's Trevin Wallace, second-year player at linebacker, and then it's Christian Roseboom, who's going to be wearing the green dot helmet comms, and he's going to be an important piece of this linebacker room this year. Behind them is Claude Sherrillis, who is somebody that Dan Morgan pointed out they've been developing over the last couple of years. He got a couple of starts last season before having a season-ending injury late in the year. And then the rookie, Bam Martin-Scott, who we talked about this yesterday, was petitioning for a 7th year of college football down in Columbia. That did not work out. Now he's on a 53-man roster. I think that's a better situation for him. I know college is awesome. Oh, but damn, dude, that's just still wild to me that was something he was trying to do. But now he's here in Carolina, getting an opportunity to be a backup, help out special teams wise, and be developed in this system. So he feels good about where they're at. Didn't want to make a move as far as the waiver wire just to make a move. Feels good about the group that they have. Also mentioned Chris Barnes, the veteran who they sign during the middle of the training camp and preseason, who they ended up cutting on Tuesday. He's back on the practice squad. We'll talk more about the practice squad here momentarily here on the show. But they feel good, at least Dan does, but the linebacker group. And I would certainly hope so, because I'm looking at it, at least on paper, and what we've seen from them, and eyebrow is raised. They're spending a ton of money on the offensive and defensive lines, which I think is a great thing and where you should be spending money at, especially if you're not paying a high-priced quarterback or even a high-priced edge rusher at this point in time. Like, spend your money on those two position groups. But looking at linebacker here and across the league, that's been a position much like running back that monetarily, unless you're like a Fred Warner, you're just not getting the kind of money that you might have gotten in the past. So that's been a de-emphasized position here in Carolina financially, and in many places across the league, that inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker spot here in Carolina. The plan at safety, another group where there's questions about depth and what they have. Of course, Trevon Merrick came in over free agency from Las Vegas. He's going to be a starter there. And then who's going to be next to him? Nick Scott has won that starting job just based off of what we saw from him during camp in the preseason. Did not play on Thursday, meaning that he is a starter and that he was safely on the roster. You also look at Lathan Ransom, had a nice interception in that game of Mason Rudolph against Pittsburgh on Thursday. So he's somebody who's shown some nice traits. And then Damani Richardson was arguably the best of the safeties that played last year. At least that's what Pro Football Focus PFF had to say when looking back at those grades. There's 4 guys in there, and really probably 3 that you're looking at that are intriguing prospects for this team. And the one guy that everyone's really still questioning is Nick Scott, who a couple years ago in Cincinnati was literally the lowest graded safety in the NFL, according to PFF. And last year did not really show a ton. Well, he's back. He knows the scheme. And that's one thing that Dan Morgan pointed out, that he knows his defense really well. And clearly he's someone that Ejiro Evero trusts enough to where this guy's going to be on the roster in a season where he may not be back, depending upon how things play out defensively. So they got Trevon Merrick and then 3 guys that Dan Morgan really likes that they can rotate around him. So we'll see how that plays out. Yesterday, when we were talking to Dave Canales, he was fairly non-committal over the kicker, Ryan Fitzgerald, the rookie from Florida State, who won that job over Matthew Wright, saying that, yeah, he's the kicker for now and that there are more kickers than there are spots for kickers in the NFL. So basically, if Ryan Fitzgerald struggled at all, and from what I saw during camp, Matthew Wright was better on the skinny post than Ryan Fitzgerald. But Ryan made some nice kicks, and Dan Morgan talked about how he really likes Ryan Fitzgerald. So he has a strong leg, an extremely strong leg, which is something that the last guy, Eddie Pinheiro, did not have, which I think is a big reason why he's not here, along with the whole holding out and skipping voluntary OTAs last year, which is a wild move for a kicker. Do what you got to do, Eddie, but did not play out the way that I'm sure he wanted to play out. But they have really liked Ryan Fitzgerald, at least Dan has, and they've seen him improve each week as far as the kickoffs go, which was an important piece of the competition there for the kicker. And he performed well in games, making a 50-plus yarder, making that 40-plus yarder as well. And he thinks that he's a good player that they can grow with. And they know there's going to be ups and downs throughout the season and maybe even in the future with him being a young kicker, but they think that he's a guy who could potentially at least solidify that spot long-term in Carolina. Whereas Dave Canales, a little bit less so committal on him, but he's got to perform. It's a performance-based league. It's meritocracy. If you don't go out there and do your job, then you end up not having a job at the end of the day, just like everywhere else in life here in America for the most part. Certainly exceptions, of course. But Ryan Fitzgerald is the kicker. Dan Morgan seemingly has a little bit more confidence in him than the head coach, Dave Canales, was at least putting out there on Wednesday when we spoke to him. The practice squad has come together. A couple of familiar names that were recently cut on Tuesday are back, and there's a brand new quarterback 3 in town, and he's a local guy. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Hey, Locked On Panther fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code Touchdown and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just for buying gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out at any time to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now and use my limited time promo code Touchdown for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code Touchdown. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you can save. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Back here on Locked On Panthers, and before we get to the conversation we're going to have about the practice squad here in Carolina, looking over at Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network putting out this tweet recently as we're recording the show. Veteran wide receiver Hunter Renfrow has interest from several teams and is weighing his options after his surprise release from the Panthers. Per sources, Carolina wants to bring him back, but Renfrow, 29, has opportunities elsewhere and is mulling his next move. So that's, I guess, the hang up. It's not necessarily only the role and maybe the finances and maybe him wanting to retire. It's that other teams are interested in bringing him back. And you saw early in training camp, like you didn't see it, but we saw early in training camp that Hunter Renfrow looked like the old Hunter Renfrow. Then he had the hamstring injury, missed almost 2 weeks, came back and wasn't making the plays and having the impact he was having through the first 2 weeks of training camp. And that's something that Dave Canales alluded to when we spoke to him on Wednesday, that he saw the peaks and he saw the valleys when watching Hunter this preseason, and he wanted to see more consistency out of him, which makes me think that if they bring him back, he needs to see that consistency on the practice squad, and then eventually they could elevate him to the 53-man roster. But there's surely teams out there who need a veteran receiver and maybe have heard enough from what Hunter Renfrow was able to do early on in camp to believe that he can come in there and help them out. But he's looking at other opportunities, and Carolina had an opportunity to keep him around. They instead chose Adam Thielen for the time being. Of course, he was traded yesterday, but they chose Jalen Coker. Not surprised. They chose Tyrone McMillan, obviously, and also Xavier Legette, but really they chose David Moore. They chose Bryson Tremaine, and now Dale Von Campbell and Jimmy Horn Jr. They chose those guys over Hunter Renfrow to be a part of their currently 7-man wide receiver room on the active 53-man roster. So if he ends up going elsewhere, and that's on the Panthers. They decided that he wasn't someone they wanted to keep around for the 53-man roster. Yes, they knew that they could cut him and he was not subject to waivers, but they also had to have known, and I'm sure they do know, that he may not come back because he could choose to go somewhere else, and there may be some other interest. So according to Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, there is other interest outside of Carolina in Hunter Renfrow. And of course, Dan Morgan saying earlier this morning that he spoke to him last night and that he has expressed Hunter that they want him back. My only question is, in what role? And is that why there's still a hang up here? As of course, there's still other interests. And what could those roles be on the other 31 teams throughout the league? So looking at the practice squad now, as those have been primarily announced, there's only 2 that haven't, but that have been reported. And even Dave Canales answered a question about one of the players yesterday. But looking at it, Chris Barnes, the linebacker who was cut, the veteran, he's on the practice squad. He's going to be kind of that 5th guy. I would not be surprised if he gets elevated at some point in time. Something to understand, last year, 13 of the 16 players on the practice squad in week 1 were active for at least one game with the team last season. So very likely we're going to see plenty, maybe the majority of these guys like last year get elevated. And I would think Chris Barnes would be certainly one of those. Shamar Bartholomew, who got cut, he's back after basically losing his job to Caleb Evans for the time being, and he's still here in Carolina. You got Jared Harrison Hunt, who's here, the undrafted free agent from SMU, still around. Boogie Basham from Wake Forest, still here. Hendon Hooker, that's the one that really stands out at this point in time. There was questions of whether the Jack Plummer experiment was going to be over. It is. So you guys can now sigh a breath of relief for whatever reason. Like, he was never going to play. Like, he's not an NFL quarterback at all. Like, what I've seen from him, like, yes, technically he has been an NFL quarterback. He can always have that. And that's great for him that a dream came true. But you watched him. No, it wasn't it. So I wish Jack the best of luck. Congratulations to him on having the success of even getting to the NFL, something obviously I never did. And I'm sure y'all have not done either, which cool. But yeah, the Panthers need to go try to find somebody else developmentally who could have made sense for them. And I think Hendon Hooker does. And he's a guy who's from Greensboro, went to Delhi High School, was at Virginia Tech, transferred to Tennessee, and was on that just outstanding offense had a couple of years ago with Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt at wide receiver for him. Really, Hyatt broke out that year as Tillman was injured. But he was great that year. It looked like a Heisman Trophy finalist potentially. And then he tore his ACL in that game in Columbia, where the Gamecocks just kicked their ass on that Saturday night. And that may hurt his draft stock a little bit. The thing about him and just like the offense that they have at Tennessee, it's a Mickey Mouse ass high school offense. Like, it's a joke, and it does not develop quarterbacks the way that some of the offenses could do in college. Now, before you get upset, Tennessee fans, like, Josh Heupel's job and every college coach's job is not to develop these quarterbacks for the NFL. Their job is to win games. Otherwise, they get fired. In the league, yeah, like, you got to develop the guy, and if you don't, and also win games, you get fired. So he's now in a situation, Dan Campbell said this the other day, that he feels like a change of scenery could help him. And now he's coming back to his home state of North Carolina, and he's in a developmental program to where I think they're going to give him a lot of good help, and to have not just Bryce, but really Andy Dalton here, I think that will help him. And I do think he's far more talented than Jack Plummer ever was and ever will be. And that is actually a positive addition for Carolina. But I still think there's a lot there to be learned. And the fact that he really can't play in games anyways, to really develop, that probably doesn't help coming from that, again, Mickey Mouse system that they run up there in Knoxville. But good talent. Glad to have him here, and we'll see how that goes. Jarrett Kingston, he's back around. I thought he could have been the 10th guy, but he's still here, which is a good thing. Apollo Mwansa, he's here in Carolina as well. He's part of the International Player Pathway Program, which means he does not count against the 16-player limit. So Carolina can have 17 players on a practice squad. They did this last year. I think every team should do this. There's no harm in having an extra guy and then developing him. We see what happens. Maybe he can become an FAO Botto one day here in Carolina. Maybe not, who knows, but I don't see any downside to having him around. Bryce Pierre, tight end, he's still here. Jasim Reed, the wide receiver, still here. Cornerback Michael Reed, he got signed back. Defensive tackle Sam Roberts. Anais Smith, formerly of Texas A&M, could be a returner one day. It certainly did that role down there in College Station. He is signed. Offensive tackle Michael Tarquin still here. Safety Trevion Thomas, and then offensive lineman Brandon Walton. The two names that have not been officially announced by Carolina is running back DJ Dallas, who spent time in Seattle with Dave Canales and a large portion of this coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball. Dave talked about him on Wednesday. He's going to be around here. And then defensive back Kalen King from Penn State. He's a rookie. He's also getting an opportunity. So again, 13 out of 16 players who were on the practice squad week 1 were active for at least one game last year. So I've been telling you all about this. Yes, it's a 53-man active roster. Only 48 get a jersey on game day. But look at this as a 69, really 70-man roster and how those guys can be utilized, elevated throughout the season to a certain amount before they have to be signed to the active roster. So that's practice squad right now here in Carolina. And a quick update also on Hunter Renfrow, who has other opportunities potentially in the NFL. With Renfrow gone and Adam Thielen gone and a lot of older players having exited the last couple of years, the youth movement has begun in Carolina. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. I've used PrizePicks for a few seasons now and love how simple it is. I can get a lineup in before my coffee finishes brewing. The flex play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. The youth movement has begun here in Carolina as the Panthers head into the 2025 season. Taking a look at the current 53-man roster, there are 12 rookies on the team. The 8 draft picks, along with Ryan Fitzgerald, Corey Thornton, Bam, Martin Scott, and Dale Von Campbell. Including those 12 rookies, the Panthers have 19 players on the active roster who are either rookies or entering into their second year. So that's 35% of the active roster is either extremely young or really inexperienced as far as them never having played in the NFL or not having played a lot, even in the 1 year that they played here in the National Football League. And Dan Morgan was asked by Joe Person of The Athletic this morning at the press conference just about the youth in the building and asked him if they are looking ahead to 2026 to try and contend because of some of the moves they've made, like trading away Adam Thielen and cutting Hunter Renfrow and cutting ties with other veterans and going younger, or if he thought they could finally maybe contend this year as well. And of course, Dan said, yeah, they're looking to win now. They're excited about the young guys that they have. They're not looking ahead to 2026 and all the kind of stuff that you'd expect for someone to say. But you look at it, it does make you go, as far as do they have enough experience and can the young guys step up and be able to make enough of an impact right away for Carolina to be a contender for maybe the division title, possibly a wild card this coming fall in 2025. Like, if you look at the roster overall, though, like the one area where they are experienced is where you want to be experienced at, which is the offensive line. The only offensive lineman who isn't on his second deal, at least his second deal, is Ike Ekwonu, who's entering into his 4th year on the team. So I ain't really worried about Icky at this point in time. He's a veteran here in Carolina, but Taylor Moton's been around for a while. He re-signed last week or got extended last week. Robert Hunt, he's been around now, entering to his 6th year. Damian Lewis, same case, his 6th year. Austin Corbett, been in the league for a while. So at least on the line of scrimmage offensively, a ton of experience. And same case defensively. Derek Brown, he's now back. Yeah, he missed last season, but now he's entering into, I think, what it would be his 6th year in the league. Bobby Brown III, he's getting his 2nd contract. Ashawn Robinson's been around for a while. Turk Wharton's in his 2nd contract. So a lot of experience when you look at the starters on the offensive and defensive line. The two areas where if you're going to be experienced, you want to be experienced certainly and those spots rather than anywhere else. And quarterback obviously would be one of those areas as well. And they do have Bryce as a 2-year starter at this point in time. And then also you have Andy Dalton behind him. So there was experience in that quarterback room, but everywhere else, especially offensively, and even counting Bryce, you see a lot of youth, wide receiver, primarily is that spot where there's a bunch of youth there. As you look at McMillan being a rookie, Leggett, Coker, both those guys, second-year players. Bryson Tremaine, a second-year player. Jimmy Horn Jr., a rookie. David Moore, he's the only vet in that room as a seventh-year player. Dale Von Campbell, he's a rookie as well. You get four of those guys basically haven't really played in the league at all, and Tremaine has, but he's played a total of 48 snaps in a regular season game, going back to the two games he played last year up in Washington for the Commanders. Tight end, also really young, just looking at the pass catchers overall. You have Jatavion Sanders with 1 year under his belt. Mitchell Evans is a rookie, third year for James Mitchell. Tommy Trimble now entering into his fifth season in the league and here in Carolina. So offensively, outside of the offensive line, and I guess Andy Dalton in running back, you have experience. Chuba now entering into what his fifth year, and Enrico Dowdle's been around for a little bit too. It's a lot of youth as far as pass catchers go, but there's experience there on the line of scrimmage. And linebacker, Trevin Wallace, second year, got a good experience last year, starting 8 games. But Christian Roseboom, he's in his fifth year now. J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson, both in their fifth years. Javon Merrick, Nick Scott, fifth and seventh years, respectively. So defensively, where they really need to get better and add experience and talent to that room, they have way more experience in an offense where there's a plenty of upside with the pass catchers, and then a young quarterback entering into his third year and continue to be mentored by an older quarterback in Andy Dalton, who knows exactly what Bryce is going through, aside from he wasn't the number 1 overall pick, and then a quarterback coach and a head coach and Dave Canales, who's there as well, with inexperience as a head coach overall. So still a very young organization going on here in Carolina when you look at the roster top to bottom, and you look even at the front office with the youth of Dave Canales in that role, Dan Morgan in the role he's in, and even Brant Tillis in the role that he is in as well. And if it works out and this youth movement pans out here long term, you're going to have these guys for a while, and you're going to have what could be a long-term winner and that sustained success that we were all promised years ago by Dave Tepper that has not come to fruition. He did talk about short-term suffering for that long-term sustained success. They've had the short-term suffering. Now it's time to see that sustained success that we were promised, and hopefully that will happen here in 2025 as the youth movement has begun here in Carolina. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. As on Wednesday, the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Labor Day Monday as week 1 will finally be here as the Panthers get ready to head down to Duval to check out the Jacksonville Jaguars, and hopefully get off to a strong start in 2025.